It started as a twisted obsession, one that would spiral into a nightmare no one saw coming. When Mark insisted his wife, Lisa, agree to a threesome with his longtime friend and business partner, Daniel, she felt trapped. Daniel had always been a little too invested in their marriage, watching Lisa with a fixation that made her uneasy. But Mark ignored the warning signs, convinced this would only strengthen their bond. What should have been a night of pleasure turned into something far darker. As secrets unraveled and hidden intentions surfaced, Lisa found herself caught between two men, one blinded by love, the other consumed by control. Tensions exploded, leading to a moment so brutal, so irreversible, it left everyone questioning how they got there. What really happened that night, and how did one man's obsession turn deadly? Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking truth behind this tragic tale. Lisa never wanted any of this. She had always sensed something off about Daniel, the way he looked at her, the way he talked about their marriage like he was part of it. But Mark wouldn't hear it. To him, Daniel was his most trusted friend, someone who had been by his side through everything. So when Daniel suggested the idea, planting it like a seed in Mark's mind, Lisa knew her protests would be ignored. Mark saw it as an adventure, a way to spice things up. But Lisa felt the walls closing in. The tension in Daniel's eyes wasn't excitement. It was something else, something dangerous. And yet, she felt powerless to stop what was coming. That night wasn't about intimacy, it was about control, about possession. And as the hours passed, what started as an agreement quickly unraveled into something far more disturbing, something no one could take back. As the night unfolded, Lisa felt like a stranger in her own home. The candlelight flickered against the walls, casting long, distorted shadows that made the space feel unfamiliar. She sat stiffly, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress, while Mark and Daniel poured drinks, laughing like this was just another casual evening. But underneath the forced smiles, something darker lurked. Daniel's eyes lingered on Lisa too long, his presence too close. She could feel his breath when he spoke, hear the subtle weight in his voice. It wasn't affection, it was possession. And Mark, so caught up in his own desires, refused to see it. He brushed off Lisa's unease, reassuring her with empty words, blind to the tension creeping into the room. Then came the moment that changed everything. A single gesture, a look, a shift in the air. Lisa's pulse pounded as she realized this wasn't about desire. This was about control, and she was trapped. Lisa's heart pounded as the night took a turn she couldn't control. Mark, still lost in his own delusion, poured another drink, his laughter ringing hollow in the thick tension that filled the room. Daniel wasn't laughing anymore. His focus was locked on Lisa, his expression unreadable, but the intensity in his eyes sent a shiver down her spine. She glanced at Mark, silently begging him to see what she saw, to recognize the danger creeping closer. But he was too distracted, too trusting. He didn't notice the way Daniel's fingers tightened around his glass, the way his jaw clenched every time Lisa hesitated. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low, deliberate. "You don't have to pretend anymore, Lisa. I know you feel it too." Her breath caught. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Mark turned to her, confused, but before she could speak, Daniel took a step closer. And in that moment, Lisa realized this wasn't about one night. This had never been about a simple request. This was something far more dangerous, and she had no idea how to escape. Lisa's stomach tightened as Daniel's words hung in the air, thick with meaning. She wanted to deny it, to push back, but something in his stare told her he wouldn't accept no for an answer. Mark let out a nervous chuckle, as if trying to shake off the tension, but his fingers gripped his glass a little too tightly. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" Mark asked, his voice uneasy. Daniel didn't even look at him. His gaze stayed locked on Lisa, like Mark wasn't even in the room. "You know exactly what I mean," he said, stepping closer. And then, just for a second, Lisa saw it, the flicker of doubt in Mark's eyes. The moment of realization. His best friend, his trusted partner, wasn't just interested in some reckless thrill. This was deeper, more personal. Mark turned to Lisa, searching her face for answers, but before she could speak, Daniel reached into his jacket. Lisa's breath caught. And just like that, the night spiraled out of control. Lisa's breath came in short, panicked gasps as Daniel's hand moved inside his jacket. Mark's eyes darted between them, confusion turning to something darker, fear. The weight of the moment pressed down on all three of them, the air thick with unspoken truths. Then Daniel pulled out a small envelope. Lisa's pulse hammered as he tossed it onto the table. It slid across the surface, stopping just inches from Mark. "Open it," Daniel said, his voice eerily calm. Mark hesitated before reaching for it. His fingers trembled as he pulled out a set of photos. Lisa saw his face drain of color before he even spoke. Her heart pounded. What is this?" Mark's voice cracked. Daniel finally turned to face him. "Proof," he said. "She was never yours, Mark. She was always meant to be with me." Lisa's stomach dropped. The pictures showed her moments she didn't even remember, carefully captured and manipulated. Dinners with Daniel, casual conversations, stolen glances, twisted into something they weren't. Mark's expression twisted in disbelief. "This isn't real," Lisa whispered. Daniel's face darkened. "Oh, but it is. You just never saw it." The room was silent for a long moment, until Mark finally understood. His best friend hadn't just betrayed him. He had built a fantasy, one he was willing to destroy everything for. And in that split second, everything snapped. Mark lunged, knocking the table over as the room erupted into chaos. Lisa screamed as the two men crashed to the floor, years of trust shattering in an instant. But just as Mark overpowered Daniel, pinning him down, Daniel's lips curled into a smile. "You think this ends with me," he whispered. Lisa's blood ran cold. Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Someone else was here. And just like that, the nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. Lisa's breath hitched as the footsteps grew louder. Mark froze, his grip still tight around Daniel, both men realizing at the same time. This wasn't just between them anymore. The door creaked open, revealing a figure Lisa barely recognized. It was Daniel's assistant, someone she had always thought was just another employee. But the cold, knowing look in their eyes told her the truth. Daniel's twisted obsession had never been a secret, it had been a plan. Carefully built, slowly executed, and Lisa and Mark had walked right into it. But Daniel had made one miscalculation. Lisa wasn't the woman he thought she was. She wasn't weak. As he smirked, thinking he had won, Lisa grabbed the nearest object and slammed it down between them, breaking the moment, breaking the illusion. Sirens wailed in the distance. Help was coming. The nightmare was ending. But as Daniel was dragged away, his final words haunted Lisa. "This isn't over."